Hello everybody, welcome to Mr. Stansfield's Education Videos. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to process RAW files for maximum print size. I got a request from somebody through my website who was browsing through here on my anonymous landscape project and was looking through these images and was struck by this image right here. They wanted a wall size print. Well, that's great, but this image is from 2012 and it was captured using a Canon point-and-shoot camera. Let's actually look here at Bridge. I've got my Bridge pulled up here. Here's the image sized for a 16 by 16 print, and if we look at our pixel dimensions here at Bridge, you can actually see that this is at a minimum print resolution, PPI of 240 pixels per inch. Let's go ahead and open that file up. This is the processed file. And it's going to take a second to read that. I'm opening it up, I just realized, from a server, so this normally wouldn't quite take so long. When I process the raw file, I'll bring it in from the server onto the computer here. So let me pause it while we were waiting for it to load there. So here's the image in Photoshop, and of course, if we look up our file info, we could have done this in Bridge as well. Let's actually go to Bridge real quick and let's look at our camera data. So let's pull up our metadata here, drag that up. And so the camera data, there it is, the G11, the Canon PowerShot G11. I was curious, I just Googled it real quick. So this camera came out, I believe, in 2009. It is now 2021 and has a 10 megapixel CCD sensor. The main reason that I really loved these G series Canon PowerShot cameras was the ability to capture in RAW. And we got some really great quality images, as we'll see. So you know, can you take a point and shoot camera, make an image, and blow it up to wall size? That's really the essential question of what we're talking about today. You know, and one of the things that was happening around the time here, so this is now 12-ish years ago, camera manufacturers like Canon realized, we can see here changes compared to the G10, the 10 megapixel high sensitivity sensor down from 14 megapixels. So megapixels isn't always going to give you the highest quality image. Having a lower megapixel count allows for a more sensitive and potentially higher quality image. So you have a higher quality 10 megapixel image than the same quality 14 megapixel image, but can you make that file, that 10 megapixel file, big enough? We will find out. So let's go back to Photoshop here. So here's my 16 by 16 image. If I go to image size, we can see here that this is 240 pixels per inch. And when I was at Bricks Institute of Photography, my undergraduate degree, this was the number that we discovered really is for the minimum pixels per inch resolution for print quality. And we can see here, if we change our pixels to inches, we can see this is 16.2 by 16.2 at 240 pixels per inch. Okay. And let's go ahead and zoom in, and we can see this image. And if we look at our layers over here, we can see. Here's what we start with, this color image. And I used at the time, this is another kind of potential problem here. At the time, I used a post-processing plugin for Photoshop called Silver Effects. Okay. Will I be able to duplicate this if I try to reprocess the file? That remains to be seen. And then I also used this, what is a split toning. So essentially what I did was I processed it using this black and white conversion. I added this split toning. So this here, if I turn my layer mask off, so this is going to be essentially cooling down the shadow areas here. And then I've got my paper toner here warming up the highlight areas. Okay, and I've done that with the layer mask, so we can see this is the layer mask. And these were selected purely, if I recall, from the channels. Selecting a channel it selects your highlights and selects your shadows. So these are highlights and shadows. This is a split toning, so here's before and after. It's a subtle difference. Curves, this was probably plotting points for a print. And then finally the Sharpener Pro. So this is basically my file, my workflow for creating a file for printing. Right? And if we look at this at 100%, we can see before and after for that sharpening. And then when we were printing it, depending on the paper that we chose, that sharpening may or may not be right anymore, but we'll see. So what happens when a client calls and says, all right, I want that image, but I want it 4 feet by 4 feet. And it needs to be really high quality and it needs to be sharp enough. Well, we could go to image size and we could just plug that in. We could go, all right, let's go ahead, 48 inches by 48 inches. It was 85. It's now 759. That is a huge increase. And then resample. So when you're resampling, Photoshop, generally this automatic in Adobe CC was going to work pretty good. Okay. It's going to choose the right kind of option. Preserve details 2.0. Bicubic smoother. These are, as it says, enlargement options. In this case, I'm going to choose preserve details and I'm going to go ahead and reduce noise. Yeah, I want to reduce noise. Let's actually get rid of our Sharpener Pro layer first. Let's get rid of that. And let's go ahead and do that resizing again. Okay, so here we go. We've got our preserve details. And let's reduce some noise, and let's go here to inches and try 48 by 48. It's going to think, I think I'm still pulling this image off of the server, so I'm going to pause the recording for a sec. Okay, there we go. Finally done. Took about a minute or so. And the results, let's see. All right, so we're looking at this file at 100%. Okay. It's hard to see really at 100%, right? It's so big, even on this monitor. 50%, yeah, it looks pretty good. Looks pretty good, right? And there's our size, 48 by 48, 240 pixels per inch. It's going to give us that minimum print resolution. It's, 300's better. Yeah, 240 will do. I think with a sharpening layer, this is probably fine, right? Now, what I want to do, though, is process this raw file, find the original raw file, process the raw file using Adobe Camera Raw's new features, and see if we can actually get a higher quality image. Now, part of the problem is going to be matching, right? So one of the things to consider is this sort of Silver Effects Pro that I used, the paper toner that I used, and the curves that I used to get this, final output. Sharpening is not a problem. You're always going to sharpen for the size that you're making a print. It's always the last step. But getting the same cropping, the same editing, all of that could potentially prove to be a problem. But let's go ahead and find our file here in Adobe Bridge. And let's go ahead and bring that metadata down. And let's go ahead and find that raw file. So if we look down here, you can see I've got a couple of edits going. This is a PSD file, JPEG PSD. What I'm looking for is that CR2 file. So where is the CR2 file? I think this is it right here. And you can see I've already processed this once. This is the enhanced DNG file. Well, let's go to the Adobe blog. So what we're looking at here is the super resolution. So this is one of the new features in Adobe CC in 2021. And you can see here a comparison using bicubic resampling or the super resolution. You can see, when you're pixel peeping and looking at everything, that, it looks better, right? It certainly does. There's some info here more about it. How does it work? Why do you need it? What's the outcome? But for us, what we're going to do is actually process this image using the super resolution. So let's go ahead and open it in Adobe Camera Raw first. And here, in the latest version of Adobe Camera Raw, you can see Canon PowerShot G11. Here's our CR2 file. And to run the super resolution, it's really this easy. You right-click, click on Enhance. Now, before we do that, you have your standard size down here. And if you go here, your bit depth, image size, you can see here I've already kind of processed this image. I want it to be 48 by 48 inches. And the native resolution, if I click Don't Enlarge, right, it's 11 by 11. Okay, it's 7.5 megapixels. Why isn't it 10? Well, because I wanted it to be a square, so I had to crop some of it out. So, you know, that's it's a big difference, right? 48 by 48, 133 megapixels compared to 7 megapixels. So let's go ahead and click OK here, and then let's go ahead and enhance this image, okay? And you can click here on Super Resolution. What it does is it doubles the image resolution, ideal for large displays and prints. Right? Now it's thinking about this. It's going to take some time. It's going to take up to 5 minutes. So this isn't necessarily part of every workflow. And again, I'm working off of the server. I should have copied the image to my computer. If you're working with an external hard drive, or if you're working with a server or something like that, if you're working from an image on the cloud, having it on the computer is going to be typically a faster way of working. So let's go ahead and pause. Let's let this work, and then we'll take a look at the results. We actually don't have to wait because I have the enhanced DNG right here. So what happens is it saves a DNG raw file that is enhanced. It's got that super resolution. And if we open that file up, again, I'm going to be, have to figure out a way to match everything else that I've got going on here. But if we look here at the native resolution, if we click down enlarge, it's doubled that. It's actually tripled it, right? Because it wasn't at 7.5. I think it was 7.5. We click down enlarge. The native resolution of this raw file after the super resolution is 22 by 22. And then if we upsize it to 48 by 48, we've got, the outcome is the same, but the, we're doubling roughly 23-ish. We're sort of doubling it rather than triple or mooring it, right? It was quite a bit of an increase before. This has to be better, right? I'm assuming it's better. If we look at this at 100%, this is at 48. The quality across, a tiny point and shoot sensor, your edge, chromatic aberration you can see happening out here, some blurriness, right? So if we go in our optics, let's remove that chromatic aberration. Now I'm going to convert it to black and white. So we can use profile corrections. That's actually always a good choice too. Although the question was, did I do it on the original file or not? And we're going to have to do some pixel peeping to figure that out too. But in any case, the super resolution is a great place to start if you're trying to get that bigger file. So what I've done is I've taken that native CR2, what it was 10 megapixels, cropped down to 7.5, and now it's 22, 23 megapixels. It's significantly larger. So there you go. Play around with that if you need to increase the size, if you're looking for some resolution. This is a great thing if you're trying to make a wall size print. It's also a great thing to do if you've got a small part of a single image that you're trying to access, work with, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at, I'm just going to grab another kind of random file here, and ooh, these are perfect, right? So what if I said, oh, this image, let's just check our sharpness here real quick. Sharp enough. So if I open this file here, and you're cropping, and you're like, oh man, I just really want this flower right here. Okay, here's my image, right? What's the native size of this? 2.7 by 2.5 inches. Okay. Well, this is a perfect way if you wanted to make an 8 by 10 or even a 20 by 20 print or something like that. Once you crop way into something, you can use super resolution to get some of that detail out. So this is precisely, if you look at the blog post, one of the things that Adobe had in mind with this is accessing these older files if you want to make them bigger. So I'm gonna go through here. I'm gonna have to kind of line up, okay, like getting the same exact treatment, the same value and color and all of that to the super resolution image. And then if I can do that, I'll be in good shape. And then I can do a side-by-side comparison. Like what happens when I take this fully processed image and I just resize it using Adobe's resize features in Photoshop versus the super resolution. I can kind of compare and contrast and see. I think the super resolution is going to give me a better image quality, but do I need to, right? Is Photoshop's good enough? I'm going to actually have to make a side-by-side print. What I'll do is I'll take strips kind of down the middle, or I'll take a couple of spots and then print them probably like 8 by 10 on the same paper I'm going to print 48 by 48. And then, I can just see that kind of detail and see how it's going to look on the wall. So there you go, super resolution. Enjoy.